right. Would you stand with me and turn your Bibles to Genesis chapter 41? Starting at verse 41. And it reads, So Pharaoh said to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt. And Pharaoh took his signet ring from his finger and put it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in robes of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. He had him ride in a chariot as his second in command, and people shouted before him, Make way! Thus he put him in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, but without your word, no one will lift hand or foot in all Egypt. Pharaoh gave Joseph the name Zappaneth-Paneah and gave him Asenath, daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, to be his wife. And then Joseph went throughout the land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from Pharaoh's presence and traveled throughout Egypt. During the 7 years of abundance, the land produced plentifully. Joseph collected all the food produced in those 7 years of abundance in Egypt and stored it in the cities. In each city, he put food grown in the fields surrounding it. Joseph stored up huge quantities of grain, like the sand of the sea. It was so much that he stopped keeping records because it was beyond measure. Before the years of famine came, 2 sons were born to Joseph by Asenath, daughter of Potiphar, priest of On. Joseph named his firstborn Manasseh and said, It is because God has made me forget all my trouble and all my father's household. The second son he named was Ephraim and said, It is because God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering. The 7 years of abundance in Egypt came to an end, and the 7 years of famine began, just as Joseph had said. There was famine in all the other lands, but in the whole land of Egypt there was food. When all Egypt began to feel the famine, the people cried to Pharaoh for food. Then Pharaoh told all the Egyptians, Go to Joseph and do what he tells you. When the famine had spread over the whole country, Joseph opened the storehouses and sold grain to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe throughout Egypt, and all the world came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph, because the famine was severe everywhere. When God says it's time. When God says it's time.
Amen.
We have gone for a ride just through the book of Genesis. It would have been nice if it was a smooth ride with no bumpy roads or no blind curves and no street lights that turn red just when you are trying to get there. You know, that's how street lights are when you're in a rush and running late. They're always red, at least from my point of view. But the road has been rough and rugged. And sometimes throughout Genesis, the car just went off road. And we got lost. And we went down roads where, watch out, that's a cliff. Definitely ups and downs. We read about the creation of the whole earth that was once formless and void. And God created the sun and the moon, the lakes, the rivers, the oceans, and the seas, the land that produced vegetation, and the fish and the land animals, and then he made the birds of the air, and then he made man. And for man, he brought forth a woman. We learned about disobedience.
Say it. Say it.
We learned about jealousy that brought forth murder. We learned about fear and violence and just the utter sinfulness. The utter sinfulness to the fact that God regretted that he even made us. To destroying everything, only leaving a few to start over again. To promising to never destroy the earth in that manner again. To reading about generations upon generations of people to populate the earth. To people building a tower that wasn't even supposed to be built. And from that to us getting different languages because of it. To God calling a man to leave everything and to go where he tells him to go. To making that same man a promise that he will be a great nation and he will be blessed. We even saw angels on earth and a town destroyed by fire from heaven. We even saw a woman turn into a salt. We saw old people having babies. The Lord's friends with Abraham. We saw Abraham about to sacrifice his son. And we saw the Lord providing a ram in the bush.
Yes, yes.
We saw Jacob and Esau get into it. And we saw Jacob leave for years because of his deceit and fear. We saw Jacob have a bunch of kids. He goes back home with all those kids and all those wives. And he reconciles with Esau. We saw Jacob bury his father's nurse. We saw him bury his wife. And we saw him bury his father, Isaac. And we saw Jacob and Esau's families are too big that they had to split up in the land. And we see and saw Jacob's older kids couldn't stand Joseph. They couldn't stand him to the fact that they plotted to kill him. But they decided to sell him. And now we're here. Where Joseph was imprisoned for years. And has found favor in the eyes of the king of Egypt.
Yes.
Because God interpreted a dream for Pharaoh.
Yep.
Where Joseph was an innocent person in prison for years and is now being put in charge of the whole land of Egypt.
Yes, sir.
Joseph isn't even from Egypt. But he is about to be put in second in command over a whole country.
Yes, yes.
When God says it's time. When God says it's time. Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, says that Joseph has a spirit of God in him. The Egyptians, that has many gods, says that Joseph has the spirit of God in him. Not gods with a small g, but the spirit of God, big G.
Big G.
The Spirit of God is in him. And listen to this in verse 39. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God, big G, has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. The Spirit of God gives us discernment and makes us wise. This is what happens when you have a relationship with God.
All right.
And when you are obedient to God.
All right.
This is what makes a man wise. Mm-hmm. Proverbs 1:7 says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Mm-hmm. But fools despise wisdom and instruction. Job 28:28 says, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom. Mm-hmm. And to shun evil is understanding. So Pharaoh, recognizing the God in Joseph, gives him something that the Pharaoh recognizes he himself doesn't have. Listen. And says, only respect to the throne will I be greater than you. Right. You, Joseph, a foreigner in this land, he is pretty much saying that if I wasn't king and an Egyptian, Joseph, your relationship with God and your wisdom, you would be king. But only respect to the throne. But Pharaoh recognizes who Joseph is and the greatness of him because of God. If Joseph wasn't a foreigner in Egypt, Joseph would be king of Egypt. Joseph, who has been a prisoner for years, who was shunned by his flesh and blood brothers, who has been lied on and forgot about, is now changing out his prison clothes for royal garments.
All right now.
Look at God. Look at God. For royal garments and the ring off the king's finger. His signet ring. is given to him.
Yeah.
The signet ring, the official ring that gives the stamp of approval. Nothing happens in the land without the stamp of approval, and that is given to Joseph. Just in case you all don't know, they dip the signet ring in wax and place it on official documents. That's the stamp. The stamp comes from the ring.
Yes.
That ring is given to Joseph.
All right.
The stamp of approval. So in reality, all the responsibility in Egypt falls on Joseph.
Say it.
And Joseph is honored in all of Egypt. It says, so Pharaoh said to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his finger and put it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in robes of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. He had him ride in a chariot as his second in command. And people shouted before him, make way! Make way for Joseph, who was a prisoner. To Joseph, second in command. Thus he put him in charge of the whole land of Egypt. And so the Egyptians had to bow down to not only Pharaoh, but Pharaoh assured that everyone was to bow down and to celebrate the greatness of Joseph. And Pharaoh changed his name to be more Egyptian and gave him the name Zappanephaneah, which translated to revealer of secrets.
All right.
The revealer of secrets. Joseph marries Asenath from the land of On in Egypt. There was no place in Egypt that was off limits to Joseph. No place. Joseph was free to move about the entire country and responsible for the entire country. He moved throughout the land as he pleased. So before there was a Moses, there was a Joseph. And when he was placed over Egypt, Joseph was 30 years old. And before he was locked up, let me put this in perspective. Joseph was 17 years old. 17 years old when he was sold into slavery. Imprisoned for 13 years for a crime that he didn't commit. And now he is 30 years old and over a whole country. You can't tell me God won't do it. But not in our time, in his time.
Yes.
His timing. You can't tell me serving God is not where it is. Can't make me believe it. God didn't throw Joseph in prison? Man did. God didn't lie on Joseph. Man did. God didn't sell him into slavery. Man did.
Yes.
So all those arguments about God allows this and he gives us free will.
Sad.
And we mess it up.
Yep, we do.
We mess it up with our wickedness. God is the only thing that is good in this world. The only thing that is great. That's why I started from the beginning. From the creation, when it was very good. And then we as human beings messed it up. And God is putting it back together. Fixing our mistakes. Because we are utterly flawed. I promise you, if God did not get involved, there will not be humans on this earth. Because we will kill each other off. And do the worst things possible to each other. And it's not just the things that we see in Genesis. Because we still do them to this day. We need him. We need him. We need him. We need Christ. They planned on killing their own brother. They planned on killing their own brother. But they sold him into slavery. Lied on and imprisoned for being a dreamer. And God saved him and exalted him. And Pharaoh recognized the greatness of God. Pharaoh recognized the greatness of God. And everything came to Joseph because of it. Everything came to Joseph. And everything came to fruition because God interpreted a dream. So in verse 47 it says, during the 7 years of abundance, the land produced plentifully. I'm pretty sure it was nothing that they did to make the land produce plentifully, but everything that God did. Joseph collected all the food produced in those 7 years of abundance in Egypt and stored it in the cities. In each city, he put food grown in the fields surrounding it. Joseph stored up huge quantities of grains, like the sand of the sea. It was so much that he stopped keeping records because it was beyond measure. So God made the land so fruitful that the food Joseph collected was so much that they could no longer measure it. Joseph collected food around the cities, but the people in the cities still had plenty until the famine came. But Joseph was prepared because God made sure he was prepared. He gave him the knowledge and the wisdom to prepare for such a time as this. Because as we discussed, Abraham and Isaac, God always keeps a ram in the bush. And for the period, it's Joseph. And it says, before the years of famine, verse 50, before the years of famine came, 2 sons were born to Joseph. Asenath, daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, Joseph named his firstborn Manasseh and said, it is because God has made me forget all my trouble and all my father's household. Now, I don't know if he forgot everything, right? But he was in position that he had to focus on something else and not focus on his family that sold him into slavery.
Yep.
And the second son, he named Ephraim and said, it is because God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering. God exalted him right there in Egypt. Right there in Egypt. God gave Joseph sons of his own. Throughout all his suffering, God provided for him.
Yes. Yes.
He provided him with sons to love and to share about the goodness of God with them, so they could be knowledgeable of God, and not only his sons, but his wife also. And guess what? And his servants in his household. God knows exactly what he's doing.
Oh, indeed.
Exactly what he is doing. And so Joseph gathered during the time of gathering and was prepared for the time of famine. Just like the story of the ant and the grasshopper. See, the ants worked all summer collecting food, getting ready for the winter time, storing it up. And the grasshoppers did nothing but enjoy the summer. Winter came and the grasshopper is cold and starving. It has to ask the ants for food. So the famine came, and interestingly enough, the famine didn't just happen in Egypt, but throughout the whole world. But because of Joseph, Egypt had food. Verse 53 says, the 7 years of abundance in Egypt came to an end. And the 7 years of famine began, just as Joseph had said. There was famine in all the other lands. But in the whole land of Egypt, there was food. When all of Egypt began to feel the famine, the people cried to Pharaoh for food. Then Pharaoh told all the Egyptians, go to Joseph and do what he tells you. When the famine had spread over the whole country, Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold grain to the Egyptians. For the famine was severe throughout Egypt, and all the world came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph, because the famine was severe everywhere. Pharaoh told the people, don't come to me. Don't come to me. Joseph has the answer. Listen to whatever he tells you to do and do it. He has the answers. It's time. It's time. God's time.
Mm-hmm.
When God says it's time.
It's time.
Now, the pastor said, I'm about to have heart surgery. You got it. All church business goes through you. You are to make all of the decisions until I'm healthy enough to come back. What a ride. Jesus said the hour has come and the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of sinners. When God says it's time. That the time was over for all the animal sacrifices and that there will only be one sacrifice.
Yes.
One sacrifice for everyone. And it didn't matter if you was a Jew or a Gentile. God said it was time.
Yeah.
And Jesus, the Lamb of God, was the sacrifice. Nevertheless, he said, not my will, but your will be done.
That's it.
It was time. It was time. And then he went to that cross. Willingly nailed to the cross.
Say it.
An innocent man.
Yeah.
An innocent man had done nothing. Sinless. Nailed to the cross as a sacrifice. For my sins and your sins.
Yes.
So we can be reconciled back to God. Because the wages of sin is death.
That's right.
Where we should have been on the cross, he took it up for us.
Yes.
He bore our iniquities. A sinless man. And while he was on the cross, he even forgave the ones who were killing him. He wasn't dead.